Pastor Robert Smith, welcome to American Black Journal.
God bless you. And I'm just real excited about being here with you. I think this is a very, very important part of media, educational, informative, and inspiring.
Yeah, so I really want to talk to you about the role that gospel music plays, in your church, which has this incredibly rich history because of Aretha Franklin being in the choir there as a child, and of course growing up in that church. But I also just want to talk about it more broadly and the role that the music plays in our faith in Detroit and in the Black community.
Well, certainly, if you are a student of history, you know that the slaves only made it by singing. My grandmother taught me the same thing. She would give me a task. I would hate doing it. I would stand there crying, trying to get through. And she said, listen, get your song. If it's just in your heart, even if it doesn't come from your lips, sing that song and you'll be through before you know it. And singing is a great reliever. It helps us to escape the agony of life in many ways. But Roy Jones said the only difference in the gospel and the blues was that one you called on your baby, the other you called on God, but the hope was the same. You would find relief in doing so. And certainly Reverend Franklin and Ray Charles, I think, understood that better than anybody, that it was all about relief from the everyday agonies of life.
Of course, Reverend Franklin had such an outsized role in the civil rights movement. And I've always thought that the power of the music of the church married very easily with that idea of civil rights. And it's that history of the music as a way of maintaining, sustaining Black people that made it such an easy partner for that civil rights struggle.
Yes, most people don't understand. The Baptist Church, of course, has fallen off greatly in the last 20 years because music changed so much, and many Baptist churches are very slow to change. I remember the struggle in the early 80s to bring in praise teams rather than deacons doing devotions. But most people didn't understand about the deacon doing the devotion. When I came up in church in the 50s and 60s, if you had 16 deacons, that meant 16 prayers and 16 hymns going, and that man had to get there to do that because he was criticized by his people because he was working for the white folk. Other Blacks were picking up jobs, little hit and run jobs and go on, but their families could not advance that way. But that Black man that wanted his family to advance, be able to send his children to college, to own a home, he went to work for the white man knowing that he'll never be called by his name. I don't think you're old enough to know anything about that period of life, but I grew up in it. But your name was uncle, your name was preacher, your name was anything but your name. I have worked 13 public jobs in my life, and on most of those jobs, I was never called by my name. But those Black men stayed there and took that and took everything on it. Well, to put up with that, then you got up Sunday morning, you went to church, and it was the place you could release. You couldn't do it at home or in the community. People would think you're crazy. So those deacons got up there and you knew the song and you knew the prayer. It was the same prayer and the same song, but it was relief. And a lot of our young people don't understand that. Music changed a whole lot during the latter part of the 80s. The mass choirs came in, and then of course, even the flavor of the music changed. I think the Weiner set a new trend when, I think it was Marvin Weiner who said, we don't do gospel music, we don't do secular music, we do good music and let people decide. And that's where it came to. Um,
So tell me about music at New Bethel now. I mean, the history there is so well known and so influential. What role does the music play in your ministry and for your congregation?
well, it's a great, great challenge now. I tried to resist, same way I did when we first started in the latter 60s, to bring in drums and guitars to the Baptist church. I resisted until I couldn't resist. And of course, when I opened the doors, we got a mass choir, we recorded, became the premier choirs of Birmingham, Alabama. I had Daniel Payne College and Miles College right at me, brought in those college students. They can temporize the music, and of course, we drew a lot of people. Now at New Bethel, during the pandemic, I've spent that time renovating and modernizing for what I said I would never go for. Charles Spurgeon said that one day the pulpit will become a stage and the sanctuary would be a theater, and people would come to see the best show in town. He said, the problem is the world can always surpass us. So I resisted for a long time the back wall lighting and all the big screens and everything. But here's the justification. Even God can't change a man without his attention. So when he got ready for Moses, who had divorced God and his people and resided to the backside of the desert, he set a bush on fire that wouldn't consume. He didn't have to do that, but he had to have Moses' attention, and that's the way he got it. So I got to have the attention of people. I buried 54 people during the pandemic, and I thought about, I'm 70, my peers and my group that came through these 40 years with me, they're 70 and 75, and I've been satisfied. I have 9 pastors who come out of the church in my 40 years there. Reverend Solomon Kinlock is the most popular, and most of the time, people that join our church between 15 and 40, they would either go to my son or to Reverend Keith Wilson or mostly to Reverend Kinlock. And it didn't bother me because they were still in church. But then I thought about at 70, I have 5, 6, 10 years at most. And I didn't want the church to become just a museum of senior citizens trying to go on. So I'm making that change. We're doing music by track for a lot of the stuff when we get back, so that we can play this very hot group called Bethel, the Heal songs. They have the up stuff, Elevation Church, stuff like that. And we got to get in there to hold that crowd, to first get their attention and then to hold them.